Hey everyone, Tony Winston here for Jazz Piano College. I've written out a bass line for On a Clear Day, and I'd like to share with you some of the thought that went into it. So I start with the Barry Harris idea, which is the bebop scale, putting a passing tone between the 6th and the 5th degree of the scale in the key of G. All right? And a lot of what I did here was with the idea of playing the bass line with my left hand, though I think that any bass player could probably, use ideas from this video for sure to, on how to construct a good bass line. But, when you're playing the right hand and the left hand bass line at the same time, you can plan out some things that might not happen normally in a trio. And you'll see some of those in a minute. So, Barry Harris idea. And, I tried to, have the melody and the bass line not fight each other. I wanted them to work together. On to the C7th. Now, I got to say that I found those two measures to be the most difficult to really come up with something. I tried a lot of things. Stuff like that. And that sounds pretty good too. But this is what I came up with. Just outlining the chord, and there's that note is in the melody. So I went ahead and used that. And then, I'm trying to get back to G. Now, one thing that I think is pretty important, unless your name is Ron Carter or Victor Wooten, you want to play the root of the chord. Every time the chords change, you want to play the root first on beat 1. Now, if you got two measures like this, you don't have to hit the root again. You could just keep, kind of take a little adventure there. But I went ahead and hit the root again. And see, right there, I'm doing a chromatic connection into B minor. And it's a good idea for bass players to use these chromatic connections, because if the keyboard player is using some rootless voicings and things, these chromatic connections will work out in some very nice ways. So here we are in B minor, and now E7. And this is a perfect example right here. We're on E. And here I'm using, like a rootless voicing. The keyboard player's thinking E7 sharp 9, but the bass player, by playing that chromatic connection, a tritone away from E, makes it into a B flat 7th there, with some extra added attractions, the 9th and the 13th. On to the A minor. So on the chart, it's just like this, but a nice big chord here would be nice. Contrary motion, always a nice thing to have. Where the melody and the bass line move in different directions. If you want to hear like the melody and bass line working perfectly together, I would suggest listening to Mel Torme Swing's Schubert Alley, where he does a bunch of Broadway songs. Marty Paich is the arranger. There's not any piano or guitar in there. It's just horns. And a lot of time it's just like the drums, the bass, and the vocals. And, the bass lines are probably written out to really support the vocal line. So that's a good resource there. All right, let's get back to the A minor here. Now, right here's another Barry Harris idea. All right, so the chord is B flat diminished. But there are several dominant 7th chords that can be constructed from this diminished chord. All you do is you lower any of the notes a half a step. So like you could get a C 7th, you could get an A 7th, And the most effective ones here are either the E flat seventh or the F sharp seventh. And that's the one I picked, was the F sharp seventh. So here, instead of thinking like on a diminished chord, I thought about the F7 and just outline the chord. Right? That's F sharp 7, and that's all the right hand is doing, so. Yeah, right hand's playing the diminished chord here, but the bass line just stays with that. Let's do it one more time. There's another example right there. By approaching from a half step above, it gives at least the keyboard player an opportunity to play a nice chord there. And even if he doesn't, or maybe there's a solo going on, it's going to be a strong line. All right, here we go. Same thing again. Right there again, another chromatic connection. One there, and then one right here. So let's take a look at that. A minor. All right, that's like an E flat sharp 9. But it could just be an A7, But, and the bass player could stay on A there. But that E flat makes it awfully sweet. Very nice low rootless voicing here. And then, the tritone substitution leading back into, this time, G diminished. Now, it's a typical reharm to do this, and I think it's in the original. Okay, so, all right, most bass players are going to play diminished arpeggio there, and that's perfectly fine. If you know the diminished scale, that works okay. So what I did, and I think Barry Harris would approve of this, and even if he doesn't, it just sounds great right here, is to use what you call the whole tone extensions. So if you take a diminished chord, you can add a note that's a whole step above any chord tone, right? So I could change this one to that, and this one to this. And, it doesn't sound like it necessarily works, but you can do this. Any note can be, and more than one note can be moved up too. So what I did was I took those notes. This one's a whole step above one of the chord tones, that's a whole step above, and this is a whole step above. And it kind of creates another diminished chord, and it just sounds great. At least I think so. Let's see. On a clear day. All right, so let's get into that one more time. It really makes the bass, I think, stand out in a nice way there. Now here's another good example of not doing a typical thing, which would be to go like that, okay? Instead, use the flat 9, the sharp 9, and then the third. And that's, that's part of the diminished scale. And even though, I'm not playing anything that resembles a diminished chord up here, it's close, right? But, it just, especially down on that low E there, coming up like this, it's just like a pot ready to boil. And usually you don't want to play the same note twice in a row. You have to do this if you're reading a chart that you don't know very well and it's going really fast. Sometimes you have to do this. But in this little spot here, it kind of works. You could do octaves. And here's this just typical stuff here now. All right, so lots of ways to get through a 2-5-1, obviously. And then the turnaround. Oh. And probably I should not have gone up to F sharp there because it's the same as the melody note. So the A flat would have been better. All right, the chart, of course, is down there in the description. One thing I've noticed too about learning a bass line like this is if you play through this chart 4 or 5 times, your left hand starts to learn the notes. And if you want to then improvise, the left hand can go on automatic pilot for a very short little period. Not the whole song, obviously, but I mean, little sections, stuff like, the 2-5-1. You can kind of learn the notes. I've had students that play a simple piece like, and their left hand will get 1 quarter note ahead or behind of their right hand. And they can just keep going like that for a couple of measures because their left hand knows the notes. And even though their right hand is kind of lost, that left hand just keeps motoring on through. And that'll happen too with you if you just practice this line over and over again and get used to it. All right, so let me try to improvise over it, and I'm going to end the video after about 10 seconds here because I'm not really ready to do this. So, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, if you're a beginning improviser, you start by just playing the melody. And then you embellish it. Of course, I know what I'm doing. So when I got to that diminished chord, I used the diminished scale, to fill in. All right, you get the idea. And that's all I've got time to do today, folks. But I want to thank you once again for all the great support I've gotten this past year through Patreon and PayPal. And, of course, right here on YouTube. Your comments and your thumbs up mean a lot to me. So thanks very much. And also your requests. Almost everything I've done recently has been by request. So keep those coming. Thanks.